Hello. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines dictionary as a reference source in print or electronic form containing words usually alphabetically arranged along with information about their forms, pronunciations, functions, etymologies, meanings, and syntactic and idiomatic uses. In this video, we're going to talk about using dictionary definitions in your essays. Don't. See you next week! No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding about not using definitions. The thing that especially emerging writers often want to do, or one thing that emerging writers often want to do, is to incorporate dictionary definitions of words into their essays, often in the introduction. For my money, this is a terrible, terrible strategy. The reason being that it serves very little rhetorical function in most instances, and it risks insulting the reader's intelligence. The problem is that, at least in my experience, having taught composition for over a decade now, the words that writers often choose to define via a dictionary definition tend to be words that readers are likely to already know the meaning of. And if readers already know the meaning of a word, giving us a dictionary definition of it doesn't do anything really productive. Basically, this just tells us information that we already have, which means you're wasting our time. And readers don't really like to have their time wasted. So this is a strategy that, one big problem with it is you take up page space without getting any benefit. And in fact, you risk boring readers because, again, you're giving them information they probably already have. The other big problem with that is that it risks insulting the reader. So, for instance, I've had several students who have done the dictionary definition of abortion for abortion rights papers, reproductive rights papers. If your reader knows what abortion is, and you say, here's the dictionary definition, essentially what you are suggesting to them is, I think that you, the reader, are so dumb you don't know what this term that's in widespread popular use means. Because that's the thing, is the only reason... There's two... I'll talk about this more in a second, but there's only two reasons, in my opinion, to use a dictionary definition. And the thing is, when you give a dictionary definition, generally speaking, what that suggests is, I think you, the reader, don't know what this term means. So that's actually a legitimate reason to give a dictionary definition. That's one of the two legitimate reasons to give a dictionary definition. If you say, here's a particular word, it's not necessarily a commonly known word, or it's not likely to be known by my audience. Here's a definition. You can do a dictionary definition, but I would actually generally say it's better to give your own definition. It's better to say, this is what I mean by this particular term. Now, this is often going to apply to things like jargon or technical terminology, particularly if you are a specialist in a particular discipline and you're writing for a generalist audience. So, for instance, I've written articles. I'm a specialist in literature, drama, adaptation studies. And I've written essays for a generalist audience. I've written for a journal for journals that are specifically marketed toward a broad interdisciplinary audience of historians, social scientists, sociologists, arts people, theater people, literature people, and so on and so on. And so not all of those groups have the same base of knowledge. So when I use a term that may be very common in my discipline, but is not common in, say, history or in fine arts or something like this, I need to define that term because I can reasonably expect readers not to know it. But again, that's primarily for things like technical terms or jargon, things that have specific meanings, disciplinary meanings, whatever it is. You generally are not going to have to do this with most words, because most readers will know what the majority of words mean.
It is a book that tells you what English words mean.
I know what English words mean. I speak English. You must be a bit of a thicko.
So the other reason, in my opinion, that you might incorporate a dictionary definition is if you're going to challenge the meaning of a word, or going to challenge the way that the reader or the audience is likely to think about it. Now, I once was at a conference presentation presented by Michael Bennett, who has not been on this channel. He's been on he has been on this channel. Michael Bennett was one of the panelists in my video about how to write a doctoral dissertation. So one of the things that Michael Bennett said in this conference presentation was the only two dictionaries that you should ever look at are the Oxford English Dictionary, because it tells you the history of a word's etymology, the way that it gets used in different times and places, and the Urban Dictionary, urbandictionary.com, because that tells you how words are currently being used. So why I think that's such great advice is that this actually gives us a good reason to think about dictionary definitions in terms of writing our essays. What do words mean? Not just what's their sort of official definition, and that's something you can get out of Merriam-Webster's or something like this. But what do people mean by words? What do they mean when they use a particular word? And here's where you can challenge the idea of a particular definition, which is a very, very sophisticated rhetorical move. It's not necessarily always easy to do, and it's not necessarily always going to be successful. But if you approach a particular term in a sort of, when most people use X term, they mean this, but if we think about the word this way, these are the implications. And that's a very broad, general, not very helpful formula, I suspect. But if you can get an audience to think about a term in a different way, you can affect their understanding, and you can change the way they look at the subject. So those are really the only two reasons I would ever encourage almost anyone to use a dictionary definition in an essay. If you genuinely don't think that readers know what the word is going to mean, or if you are challenging or reinterpreting the meaning of it. Otherwise, I think it's a big mistake. I think it takes up page space without giving you any benefits, and it brings a lot of potential negatives.